Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Hello, magical ones. Welcome to the show. In today's modern world, women are living mundane lives and selling themselves short to secure the love, approval, and safety of a spiritless society instead of living as their magical, powerful, soulful selves. So, I've created a beautiful, free new moon circle to take the tender first steps of living your wild alchemy. It's called Manifesting with the Moon, and it's a monthly gathering of witch sisters seeking to manifest magical lives on their terms. Get up close and intimate with me and book your free ticket to join us at www.nicolebarton.co.uk/moon-circle. In today's episode, I am freestyling on the important topic of how to open your heart to visioning your magical desires, which explores how you can begin to feel safe to take the first steps into visioning and dreaming, how to illuminate what holds you back, and the benefits of visioning as the necessary process of life creation. In this episode, I help you understand how to open your heart with the ultimate of love, as well as how you're already powerfully visioning, just with your focus in the wrong way. And we explore how to take the first steps into a more powerful visioning practice. Let's dive in. Welcome, my love. So today we're going to take a deep dive into the beautiful topic of visioning, which is one of my favourite things actually, and this was the topic that was voted for in the Secret Witch Circle Facebook group. So each month we're doing a new thing now where you guys get to decide which topic I will talk to. So this was actually the one that was selected by and voted for by the beautiful sisters in the group, and yeah, I'm really excited. Actually, it's funny because I kind of had this mini manifestation off, if you like. So it was like, who's gonna be the most powerful manifester? Because actually I wanted to speak to this topic, and yeah, here we are. So synchronistically it all worked out, and so very excited to dive in. So focused visioning is really what we're going to be talking about, and that is a compulsory practice to hone in life creation. And one of the things I'm going to be talking to is that you're always actually creating this way. So we're always visioning our lives, but what we're in the work of here as liberating our witch is that we are deciding for ourselves how we want to vision our life, so that we can really begin to powerfully create what we desire. And actually it's really funny because as I sit here talking to you today, I was basically provided before I started this with I was surprised and delighted actually by my lovely man who gave me a chamomile and lavender tea, which he had picked the herbs from my herb. It was a herbal hanging basket actually, and we've got some herbs out the back which we planted in spring. And it's really funny because one of my visions that I have devoted myself to, having seen something in the process of my own personal transformation about how the masculine actually isn't the evil that we have all kind of come to experience it as, or come to believe it is. And I might do an episode on that at some point. I think it's one of the options actually for the latest poll. But yeah, one of my visions that I devoted myself 2 is to be surprised and delighted by the masculine's provisions. So this morning, before I even started the episode, that is exactly what has happened. So that was all, again, very synchronistic, and can show just a simple example of how really devoting yourself to a vision can create life. So just wanted to offer that to you to start with, and I'll be sipping my chamomile and lavender tea as we go. So yeah, gorgeous. And also it's an illustration of how this really is essential work that we're in. Not that chamomile and lavender tea is essential, but you can see how the process of creation has been, the visioning has been essential to that. So having said all that, do know how tricky it can be to really hone our focus, because as secret witches, we are likely to actually really focus on what we don't want. This is very much how I used to be, and something that I still have to do the work on to really hone my focus. So it gets easier. I just want you to be reassured of that. But just the first step that we're doing here is really illuminating that's how it works. So I remember when even when I did know how this works, my face got paralysed when my facial nerve died during pregnancy, and so the right hand side of my face was completely not moving. It just would not move, and I went to several specialists, and the top London specialist told me that my face would never be healed. And so at that point in time, I went into panic mode. This is just an example of how our focus can easily get shifted, and we can lose our vision. But what happened was my focus instantly started to be on the fact that my face wouldn't heal. And somewhere deep down, there was this niggling wisdom in the background that actually there is another way. And I did have a deep desire to have my face work beautifully again. And that I was familiar with, but it felt more like a deep fear that it wouldn't heal. So I had to really focus to be able to get in touch with the desire for what I wanted to create, rather than the fear of what I didn't want, which was very, very compelling. And so I was actually in fear and was pretty terrified that my face was permanently stuck. So the more that I visualized it going wrong and visioned it going wrong in that moment, the more it did go wrong. But when I began to kind of consciously look at the stories, at the fear that was happening, I began to be able to then, illuminating that, began to help me to soften and kind of open back up to visualizing what I really wanted. So that all began to powerfully shift as I did that. So it really is a process of illuminating what is holding us back from visioning our desires. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in this episode, because what I'm really sharing on is how we're already powerful creators, and we really have to keep focused on our vision to create our dreams, which actually almost is the second step to this, because the first part is kind of getting really in touch with our desires, which often again is something that secret witches aren't able to do so easily. So if you can't even get in touch with your desires, know that that is completely normal. It's because we as secret witches usually aren't in touch with our bodies, and our bodies are really crucial in the determination of our desires. So we're going to come to all of that. But really the invitation for this episode, because I always set a vision for the episode, for each episode, for everything I do really, the invitation is to really notice what stories you have around your capacity to create and vision. And then as the second step, choose into softening, choose into creating a kind of cocoon for yourself to get intimate with your deep desires and longings, and to place your focus there. So as I said, this may not feel easy to you at the stage of the path that you're currently at. And so I'm conscious of that. That's why I've created this podcast, because I was once where you are. I've walked this path myself. That's how I've created it. And I can appreciate how once there may have just been like a dull fear that life wasn't quite how I wanted it to be, but I wasn't really sure how I could imagine it to be different. So it's likely that you may have a sense that you want something to change. You might be quite scared about what that entails and how you can actually create change. You'll likely also, if you're like me, which is probably why you're here, you'll probably not quite trust yourself. So you'll be filled with self-doubt, lack of confidence, and you're probably thinking, me, powerful? I don't think so. And yet you're powerful, because you won't be here listening today if you weren't. So it's likely that you feel some sort of kind of shame of not yet having the life that you used to dream of. Maybe you used to dream and you gave up on that because you weren't able to create that. You might perhaps doubt your powerful possibility, lack trust in yourself, like I said, and you might be hiding yourself away rather than opening your heart to vision. And I'll say again, yet you are powerful. You wouldn't be here listening today if you weren't. So that is so important. I said it twice because really that is the message that you need to take away from this, is that you are powerful. You just need to learn how to hone your focus on your vision, which is really the foundation of life creation. So also, it's likely that you've got a bit of a shadowy relationship with desire. So I touched on this a little bit already, but perhaps this shows up as you putting your needs on hold to take care of everybody else's, or to do what you think is approved of by other people. It's very likely that you suppressed all of your desires so that you can follow an expected path, which means that you've probably banished all the parts of yourself that don't fit in, or the longings or the desires, your heart and soul signals, your body's nudges. You've likely squashed those right down. And so I'm kind of under no illusion that what I speak to in this episode here is going to be easy for you as the first step. That is likely not to be the case. And even just visioning, which, self-help talks about visioning as this really simple thing, is totally not. And that is why this is the very first step really into the path of living your wild alchemy. And actually, just to be able to make contact with your desires is likely to require a lot of tending. So again, in particular, I touched on a masculine a little bit at the beginning, but we live in a very masculine driven society. There are rules, expectations, deadlines, the requirement to be really efficient. So it's likely in that kind of environment, if you aren't kind of already liberated, which who is, it's likely you've learned to kind of immediately shut down the kind of more feminine side of magic. So the things like desire, and eros is another word for kind of magic, all the kind of soulful ways of being, and maybe you even resent the masculine. But that's a whole other topic, which I am going to speak to one day. But yeah, the kind of dreamier, softer opening of the feminine is often ignored in our kind of soulless society. And whilst we can easily kind of feel victims to that, it's also not often obvious to us that this is actually our choice. So we get to rewrite the rule book of our lives because we are powerful witches. So we don't need to feel victim to that. And actually, in claiming our power back is, that is really where all the juicy gorgeousness is. So, as I said, that's not easy. I actually know this because even just this week, I longed to find myself fitting into society. Ironically, it was actually a spiritual crowd that I didn't fit in with. I went to, I felt that I didn't fit in with. I attended a mama circle with my baby Lily, and it was hilarious as I kind of illuminated all sorts from this. She went round basically in her little hippie pants, stealing all the baby's perfect little bonnets and ripping their hair off and kissing them. And when I say kissing here, open mouthed teeth kiss, aka biting them on the head. So, and I was adorned in my Queen Witch Wild kind of bright red pattern clothes, and they were in beautiful, gorgeous, long, wavy, flowy clothes, and it just, it was really interesting to notice how I felt I didn't fit in. And I really felt the pain of this. And actually, it was my own coach who reminded me that queens and witches weren't here to fit in, let alone queen witches. So, my vision is to be here to kind of almost disrupt and lead. And this is who I've chosen to become as in my vision. So, yeah, I know it's not easy. So but desire is also often not something that fits into even the spiritual path, because so often on the spiritual path we are taught to evade the body. So even in spiritual circles, even in spiritual places, pleasure and desire are often seen as almost the devil. And so at this point, you might be like, well, where does desire fit in? And really, it fits into us wild witches creating magical lives by being in our bodies and welcoming all in this space. So in reality, it's not just welcome, it's 100% required. So this space is here for your devilish witchy desires. You are here for more. I know you have a sense that, otherwise you wouldn't be here listening. And yeah, I'm just here to hold space for you to do that. You're safe here in my space to get in contact with your desires. You're safe in your femininity, which is something that I'm learning. As I said at the beginning of the episode, my resistance was to the masculine, which is why I devoted myself to receiving the masculine's provisions. And it's likely that you're probably feeling the same way, but you are safe here in your openness, safe in your body. You're safe to get in contact with your vision. Let's begin. As I'm just thinking back to the last episode, if you have listened to that one, you may already be feeling a little safer than you did previously. So the last episode that I did that was solo was on tending the nervous system. So if you've listened to that, it's likely that you may feel a little bit safer than you did previously. But if you haven't listened to it, then see what's illuminated in that episode, or see what's illuminated in this episode, and then you may want to begin listening there. Really, safety is kind of crucial to offer yourself and create for yourself in this process. So without feeling safe to go into the well of your body, you're likely not going to be able to get in touch with your desires and longings, and that is really critical to visioning. So let me take a little breath. So the first step then is ultimately giving yourself permission. So visioning, and I'll go into what exactly visioning is, and I've talked already for quite a long time before even diving into what it is, but it's really a sacred practice. And often secret witches don't allow themselves into the art of it. They don't allow themselves to fully dream their big dreams. And that there's a reason for that. It's usually in case it sacrifices or threatens their safety, love, or approval from others. And this is where you have been. This is where you have been in the mode of unconsciously creating a life you don't want until now. Likely because you haven't taken the first step of giving yourself permission to even look at what you do want. And so how could you actually create a magical life without knowing what the magical life that you desire really is? So it's likely because you're not in the magical life, it's also quite painful to look at what you do want, because it's almost that part of the journey that is quite difficult, because you're in that kind of liminal space of knowing you don't want what you have, but not actually yet really quite being sure what you do want or how to create it. So if you don't believe that you can create it, if you don't see your capacity, your power, it can be quite painful to begin to dream, because you likely won't see the possibility for you to create that. And all will become clear as you keep listening. But firstly, it's kind of allowing yourself and giving yourself that permission consciously to begin. And the first place to begin is one of the first things required really is to, again, consciously open your heart. And that sounds oversimplified, but really this is a kind of journey of its own. There are many ways to soften, but the biggest opportunity here is to begin to notice the fear that arises, as often this is kind of what closes your heart. Anything that's kind of I guess like a degenerative kind of feeling, a kind of fear, shame, anything that kind of prevents you from feeling open. This is what we're kind of looking out for, and we're going to begin to really learn to love that fear. So the invitation is into feeling into what feels most aligned for you in your life without burdening your sacred vision with how or what's easiest or what's fair. And this is entirely a process of the heart. So if your heart is closed, you're not going to be able to access that. So the invitation is into noticing, firstly, when your heart closes to your sacred visioning process, and then consciously reopening it to love. It's likely it will close, but you have the power to choose to open your heart again. And this will be a constant and conscious choice. So I open my heart, I open my heart, I open my heart, and noticing. So always noticing is a powerful illumination, but noticing where your heart becomes closed is the first step, and that you'll feel it in your body, because you'll feel that kind of tension, that fear, if you become aware of what is going on in your body as well. So the other thing with that is that often secret witches come to me expecting that this path is really easy, which I find amusing, and yet I've been there myself with that same expectation. So the first thing I just want to highlight, or I mean I've highlighted lots, so maybe it's not the first thing, but yeah, trust me, there will be fear. And if there isn't, then, and your vision doesn't scare you, then it's simply just not big enough, or it's not soul aligned and truthful. So this work, just to let you know, will not feel easy. Visioning is one of those expansive processes, and if you're not willing to be triggered, then you won't be able to expand. And I call the triggers, and my coach calls the triggers as well, material for liberation, and they are usually always offered when we begin to dream, almost a bit of a test, like, do you really want that? And I've had my fair share of those, let me tell you, but the choice is always there to kind of say, yes, I do, or indeed, no, I don't, but from a conscious place of power in that choice of no, rather than victimhood. So it's quite a funny standing joke that with my own coach, I constantly create the opportunity to choose out of my soul path and into being a bin woman, which is frequently where I return to with her when material for liberation comes my way, and I'm like, right, that's it, I'm giving up, I'm going to be a bin woman now. It's it's not that there's anything wrong with being a bin woman, it's just not soul aligned for me. So it's always a joke that this is what I want to go and do instead now. So I've obviously decided that path would be easier, but I can imagine it probably isn't actually, but it's just always quite a place that I return to when I'm experiencing material for liberation. This is the point where we have to recommit to our vision and choose into it over and over again. So yeah, it's I've never chosen that, by the way, just in case you're wondering, because if you do choose the soul aligned path, then your powerful choice is always rewarded, often in unexpected ways, and that is the experience that I've had every time I've come up against a trigger or material for liberation. I have been rewarded in unexpected ways. So the powerful choice into the path of visioning and living your wild alchemy is always the most rewarding. The other thing that I wanted to talk to is that the reason I use the term secret witch is because your power to create your vision is likely even secret to you. So you're likely right now in the arena of not quite seeing your power and feeling a lot of shame about it. So it's likely that you'll feel invisible, burned out, burdened, unheard, unseen, maybe judged, and very likely you feel too much. So these are all, so that can be something like too dreamy, for example, too emotional, too sensitive. These are all powerful witch archetype signs. And yet, the witch is a powerful creatrix, so she naturally creates whatever she focuses on. So I know that you are a powerful creatrix. It's just likely that you're not focusing on your vision at the moment, because if you haven't got access to your vision, if you can't even access what it is, then you can't focus there. So yeah, I think what's useful is to perhaps dive into what visioning is. And actually, I'll start by exploring what it's not, because visioning is often portrayed so badly in the self-help industry. And it's often portrayed as just kind of things that we have to learn, things that we have to do without potentially liberating some of the stuff that's holding us back from those. It's portrayed as just kind of refocusing without really honouring the fear and the emotions that are coming up for us when we're doing this. And often that's why it doesn't really help. So what it's not is something that we have to learn. It's something that we are already doing. So let me be really clear on this. We are already visioning our lives. We're already creating our lives. And it's just that we're doing it unconsciously. So if you're a secret witch, it's just that you're kind of probably unconsciously creating stuff that you don't want. So what visioning isn't is what it is portrayed as in the self-help industry. It's not just unconsciously wishing for things that we want, as if we're helpless and we're wishing for the universe to give it to us. This is something that I see so often, and there's lots of kind of vision boarding and just wishing for the universe to provide to us. That is not what I'm talking about when I talk about visioning. And likely, some of these practices like vision boarding can be really powerful when used in the right way. But we are already visioning. We're already visioning. It's just that you'll likely find that you've been visioning what you don't want. So this will show up in ways that you'll perhaps spend a lot of time speaking out what's going wrong. That's an example of visioning. You are likely imagining the worst case scenario. That's another example of visioning. You might spend a lot of time worrying about how to fix things. That's another powerful example of visioning. You might be thinking about what you fear. That's another powerful example of visioning. And in doing these things, you're automatically using your power to create more. So you're already doing it. It's just that as secret witches, you're likely really good at visioning what is going wrong and visualizing what's going wrong. And in doing so, you'll be creating more of what you don't want. And so that is really what we need to hone as a secret witch to liberate ourselves. And firstly, before we even get to honing our focus, we need to liberate your capacity to see your desires so that you can focus there. We're so often out of touch with desires in this society because they are felt in our body, which we spend much time ignoring because it's inconvenient. It's inconvenient to listen in to something where your body's going, no, I want to slow down, in a society that's going, go faster. It's inconvenient. So this is really where we have to make powerful choices and begin to get in touch with our desires through our body. So it's not just about refocusing, which is what much of the self-help manifestation and visioning stuff talks about. Visioning is so much more powerful than that, and especially along the path I share, which is all about liberating stuff first that's holding us back from authentically visioning. Because ultimately, visioning is really about powerfully deciding and choosing to devote your heart to the life of your dreams and magic it to life. So it's about firstly accessing your dreams and heart's deepest longings, and then honing your focus to bring those to life. So it's about shifting the focus of what you're already doing and illuminating as much shadow as possible that's keeping you in the unconscious patterns of focusing the wrong way, which is what is having you create a more mundane life. So going back to what is visioning, because we've kind of gone around in a big circle there, but it's a useful circle. Visioning is really creating life via your imagination of what life you long to create. So it's a process of dreaming, it's a process of allowing our heart to speak to us via the body. And it starts, the kind of misunderstanding about this starts so early. It's taught really incorrectly as children. This whole magical process of life creation is shut down in childhood. So we might have been labelled too dreamy, all sorts of things. And it's things like that, just that simple comment of like, don't be a dreamer. That was one of mine, by the way. That, in fact, it was that my dad, who had left the family home, he was labelled as a dreamer. So I didn't want to be anything like him, because he was, in my mind, an old story, a disgrace. So yeah, it's things like that, really simple, that can sow the early seeds of how we create life and how we shouldn't create life. And really, that has impacted the true process of life creation. So this isn't really just a nice to have. This is really necessary to life creation. So we really do have to illuminate the stories we have about visioning. So, illuminating our old stories. There are some stories that will require to be seen and liberated before you can fully open your heart to this sacred process. So I thought it'd be useful to provide some questions that might help you illuminate what's been holding you back if you have struggled with this previously. So again, if you want to kind of pause this as I give you the questions and then get on with some inquiry and come back to it, that's entirely fine. And it would be really helpful, actually. So yeah, here are the questions for inquiry. What stories can I see that have closed my heart? What did I learn in childhood about dreaming and visioning? What do I believe about the visioning process? What do I believe to be true about the creative process? How do I believe the creative process actually works? What do I believe about desires? What do I believe is required of me to truly have the life I desire? What do I believe I deserve? What do I believe I will have to sacrifice to live a life of magic? What do I believe the benefits will be of being in my power to create life as I desire? What do I believe will happen if I open my heart fully to my desires? So, those are some illuminating questions. I would love you to let me know what has come up when you do journal on those and spend some time with them. It's a really powerful practice to just begin to notice and bring things into consciousness, because as soon as we do illuminate them, bring them into consciousness, we get the power to choose again. So yeah, I would recommend spending some real time on sitting with those and seeing all that can be seen. And this can really unlock your capacity to open your heart. So, but the most important thing when you do this is that you must ask them with love rather than using them as a stick to beat yourself up with, which is often what I have done myself. So the more that you can bring love to this inquiry, the more you will see. And I really powerfully saw this recently. But the more love I could bring to an inquiry, the more I could expand past it. So I'd been beating myself up, actually, in my own kind of tyrant shadow. I have the tyrant shadow and the helpless shadow, which I have names for, and they're both opposite ends of the scale in terms of leader. Leader is the kind of essence that I'm embodying, and yeah, the shadow sides of that is that you can have a tyrant and helpless. So as I went into my helpless shadow thinking, things like I can't do it, those sorts of things are in the helpless shadow, then my tyrant shadow would come over and be like, hey, you're stupid, why can't you just do it? This is ridiculous. And the two would go round and round and round and keep me in a huge spiral of self-doubt and anger. And as soon as I began to see that actually it was even the way I was illuminating shadow and using it to beat myself up with, Queen Witch stepped in and was like, yeah, no more. Love only, please. And so from that space, it really did illuminate so much and drop me deeper into an open heart. And I can really feel, since seeing that, since illuminating that, there's this softness of like, oh, it's okay, it's safe, you can see more. And so it was like a huge sigh of relief, and my chest just felt really expansive. So when I talk about sensations in the body, when I talk about listening deeper to the body, the kind of, it's for the sensations and the minuscule little things that you may notice, the subtle nuances in the body. And for me, that one was like really like open, expansive feeling in the chest. So yeah, that's the sort of stuff we're talking about when we talk about sensations in the body, and we'll come back to that, I suspect. Yeah, so the other thing I wanted to talk to was that often it's easy in this sort of society, and this happened to me, this has happened to many clients, is that the first thing people come up with when they're visioning is, I want more money. And the thing that I've learned, the things that I speak to my clients about, is that money is never really the vision. And I once thought it was, but now I see that visioning is so much bigger than wanting more money. Visioning is really, ultimately, the question that we're asking with visioning, and what we're looking for with visioning is who we long to be. So money is never really the vision. It is always about who you long to become, the woman that you long to become. So really we're sensing into, with our visioning, into the essence of who you really are. And this is where the juice is, because when you're being who you came here to be, money and unexpected benefits and rewards, as I said earlier, will become a side effect of who you are being. So ultimately, when we're talking about visioning, we're talking about how you want your life to feel and how we're going to create that feeling. So, for example, if I vision what I want from something, it is likely that I can perhaps create it from sheer will, sheer human forcing. But if I vision the feeling I long to create, this will naturally create aligned action, and the co-creation between us in our human soul will and the universe kind of co-creating together. And I think I've talked to that on another episode, but if not, then I'm likely to talk about it again and again. So but yeah, just to give you an example, this happened recently in my visioning how I was going to spend a weekend with family. So I started off thinking all about what I wanted from them. So, for example, I've got my 1-year-old, Lily, and I was like, right, I really want a break this weekend. I want to relax. I need time to relax. And yeah, it just wasn't going well with creating that. And then it was illuminated to me by my own coach as a reminder that it was the feeling I wanted to create that mattered. And so I began to think about the feeling that I wanted to create for everyone. And instead of focusing on the wanting to relax, which ultimately was actually focusing on the fact that I hadn't relaxed, I hadn't been able to relax, so that was again degenerative, looking at it from a more generative way of thinking, well, this is how I want us all to feel, generated such a beautiful weekend. It was wonderful. And so it's always about the feeling of the vision. What feeling do you long to create? Who do you long to become? And often, again, if there's some shadow there about not deserving things, then the feeling can be an excellent way into visioning, because usually this question frees up any how, any realism, any whether it's deserved. So starting with the how do I want to feel is often a nice way in. So who do you long to become? Well, ultimately, that is the real question, is how do I want to feel deeply in my heart? What are my heart's deepest longings? And if we begin to open up our hearts, consciously choosing to open up, perhaps your first vision may even be just to open your heart. That's a great place to start. If you're not feeling that, then your vision is to open your heart. So you want to feel open-hearted. But if there were no barriers, and if there was no need to be realistic, if there were no fears, no doubts, no ties, no boundaries, no worries about how you're going to create your vision, if there was only full possibility, who would you long to be? And again, this is important because we're not getting into the how. This is purely sticking with what you desire. As soon as we get to the how, it starts to cloud it and take our focus away back into the kind of more degenerative things that we spend our days focusing on. This is about honing our focus on what we long to create. So how would you spend your days? Who would you long to be? What would you eat? What would you do with your time? Where would you live? What partner would you have? What sisterhood would you have? What would you be doing in your leisure time? How would your soul be fulfilled? How would you move your body? What family would you have? What environment would you be in? What would you consume? What would you create? Who would you be? And how would you or your life feel? Again, these are really good questions to pause on here and answer if you're feeling called to do that. This is, again, just a really powerful way of beginning to connect into who you long to become. So my own visioning, for example, as I've talked about a little bit, I long to be a leader and to really impart my wisdom and be able to guide people on their own journeys into who they long to become. And so I frequently come up against the material for liberation, which feels like a huge distraction. I get challenged on my vision almost daily. So I constantly have to open my heart to the fear that this creates, and I have to do it consciously. So my own dreams, I have big dreams, big scary dreams. For example, my vision is to be the fullest expression of leader that I came here to be. So I long to deeply serve secret witches into their liberation. That requires a lot from me. It requires for me to be love, but it also requires for me not to just be nice. And there's a difference between the two, because being nice isn't necessarily going to help people liberate their own fears, their own patterns. Always I'm going to be love, but love isn't always nice. So it really requires for me to help people liberate their own fears, their own patterns, to create death to old ways of being. It requires me to show up as leader and really model how to step into the fears of maybe hiring a nanny, of investing in myself, of taking the soul-aligned actions that I dread, and of choosing to call my clients out on things that may no longer serve them. And all of that feels edgy because of the stories that I may have from childhood about being nice. So I have to constantly choose to open my heart to my vision to walk this path. And I do, because it's who I came here to be, and it's in service to not only my soul, but the wider world and the secret witches who have come here to liberate their own kind of unique soul and to be able to show up as the wild witch they long to be. So I didn't come here to create a mundane life. I came here to create a magical one, and so did you. So yeah, it's something that you have to choose. And you also have to be willing to do the work to choose it. So again, useful inquiry here. What are the costs and benefits of accessing your heart's deepest longings? One of the reasons why we often don't access our heart's deepest longings in visioning is because we don't want to let ourselves access our dreams. So why might that be? Well, it's safer. It's safer to just sit on the sofa being nice. And yet it's not deeply serving to the world to do that. So can you see how there are real benefits in order to really allow yourself to open your heart to choose into your visioning? So will you give yourself permission? Will you choose into giving yourself permission? Now, one of the questions, because again, I'm when you vote on the topic of this solo episode in the Secret Witch Circle community each month, there's also an opportunity to then ask questions that you want me to speak to. So one of the questions asked in our online community for this solo episode was about accessing your desires. How can we really feel into and access our desires? And this is a great question. So this is about one of my favourite lines in Mary Oliver's poems, is about how we can listen to the soft animal of our body. So this really is about letting the soft animal of your body guide you. If you're not used to tuning into your body, then there's likely some liberation to do here before you can even feel safe to dream. But I know it's well within your power. And this again can be a very gentle process. So there's no rush for this journey. I know that is our experience of the modern world, but we're talking about the path of soul here. And this is, although it's not always easy, it can be taken at your own pace. So this is about the gentle process of getting in touch with your body again. And it's likely that you may not have listened to it for a while. So you're likely feeling, again, I talked about that dull fear, that disconnection with your body, that refusing to let it be heard. And that is all welcome. And actually talking about our Facebook group, we are here in the Facebook group to help you through this process, to kind of walk you through and hold your hands. So actually I have a wonderful connection creatrix, Michelle, who is over in the group, and she is very good. Her gift is really holding people's hands as they tenderly step into this path. And likewise, I'm in there to hold you as you begin softly and tenderly following the next breadcrumbs. So if you do want to join us in that Facebook group, we are there to deeply serve you as you step into this. So do join us in the Secret Witch Circle community, where you can vote on the topic that I speak to in this solo episode, but also you can ask questions that I'm going to speak to. So yeah, do join us, get interactive, get intimate with us, and I look forward to seeing you there. But yeah, we are here to help you begin this journey. And I know I may have made it sound a little bit terrifying in a lot of ways, but actually if I don't speak to the softness of it, then I'm not doing it justice, because this is an unfolding of you. It's an unfolding of who you've always been, behind the brick walls that you've kind of built up to protect yourself. So this is a softening. This way to visioning is to gently, softly let your heart open each day. So this is about beginning to create an intimate relationship with your body, to create an intimate relationship with your soul, one where you listen and you take it at your own pace. So this is about reconnecting to yourself, about deeply listening, about connecting back into the natural rhythms of life. It's about your body really taking a deep breath and kind of sighing with relief, because you've allowed yourself to fully show up and listen. So visioning is really the most beautiful journey, as you're kind of finally welcoming the opening of your heart from a closed bud, allowing it to bloom. So your heart's going to feel full, your body will feel soft, beautiful relief. And you'll begin to feel in your body all of the gorgeous benefits of letting your soul speak to you. So this is a really beautiful, beautiful process. It's one well worth all of the sacrifice that I've spoken to, and one that often you kind of just have to surrender to as well. So how is the next question, and really one of the first things that I'd invite you to do is go into nature. So nature is a wonderful place to begin liberating your wild witch. It's the place where we can really begin to settle into the wild, and it's a wonderful place to begin visioning. And we're so supported in nature by Mama Earth, and so it kind of also offers us the perfect example of the natural cycles of life. And particularly with creativity and what we're trying to create, I always think nature offers us so many examples. So the spring, for example, is an ideal example of how to nurture new ideas. We so often expect to just have an idea and go straight to summer, but actually spring is very soft. It's kind of, we're waiting for things to be nourished and to bloom. So nature always offers us a really beautiful example of how new ideas can be nurtured and how we can create. So there's also, we're talking about cycles, a really excellent time to vision in our own natural cycles as a woman. So each month there is a particular period of time during our cycle where visioning is a particularly appropriate thing to be doing. So usually in the spring of our cycle, which is around, I think, day 6, this is our creative spring. So if you are thinking about the best time to really begin to soften and create your vision and begin to dream, this would be a great time to begin. So menstrual cycle awareness can be a really powerful visioning tool. And there's a great book that talks to this. It's called Wild Power, by Alexandra Pope and Shani Hugo-Elitzer, who have actually been on one of my previous summits. So there is that on the online summit if you want to listen to their previous episode on menstrual cycle awareness. That is really a powerful way to begin stepping into that process. And I'm likely going to be doing an episode with another amazing lady very soon on this. Actually, there's a couple of people talking to this, so really there's a lot of juiciness to come up with that. So I won't go into that now, but just to be aware of the best time to harness your visioning is likely to be around the creative spring, which is around day 6. So the first thing, I keep saying the first thing, I feel like this is like the 10th thing actually, but one of the first actions, aligned actions that I would invite you to take, I guess, into this process is to go for a walk in the wild and let nature speak to you. So this is about really tuning in to where you feel the longing of desire in your body, tuning into the fears that you're noticing and how that feels in your body. So this is about noticing it all, welcoming it all, looking at what moves you, what feels juicy, what are you perhaps jealous of in others, because jealousy is always a great pointer towards our desires, even though it doesn't feel good. It can be really illuminating. So looking at jealousy, looking at what creates fear, because it's likely that what creates fear in you is something that you also may be being pulled towards. Looking at what ideas draw you over and over again. What have you previously shut out that you're no longer willing to let fear dominate you over? Where are you ready to open and soften and surrender? And where will you let your inner child be too dreamy? All of the things that we illuminated earlier are really useful to consider and contemplate whilst you are out in the wild. And you don't have to take any immediate action. There's nothing that you have to do immediately except allow it all in and just be open to the nudges that you'll get from soul, the feelings that your body will call you into. And when there's another aligned step to take, you'll begin to know as you listen deeper into your body. So for now, just really focus on your longing. Give yourself permission to listen into your longing. And as I said, nature is a great place to begin that process. The other thing that's a kind of more practical thing is to, again, create a container for your vision. So you could look at the next 1 month, the next 3 months, the next 6 months, or the next 5 years, or all. So you could start with whatever feels most accessible for you, with whichever kind of opening your heart allows. And again, you can even just look at specific events or relationships. So for example, I created a vision for this particular show episode, which I mentioned earlier. I create visions for pretty much everything I create, because I know that visioning is a crucial part of the magical process. It's, again, as I said, it's not just a nice to have, it's essential to life creation. And magic is really the process of transforming energy to create something, and visioning is directing our energy in a certain direction. So visioning really is crucial to the process. And really, there's almost two phases to visioning. So you may have noticed as I've been talking that there's almost like a phase one, which is the dreaming, the allowing yourself to imagine, to flow, to play, to tune into the body and soul's desires, to tune into your longings and all of that sort of stuff, and maybe notice fears and things like that. So this is quite almost a feminine way of being with visioning. This is softening into the feminine, longing, dreaming, opening your heart. Who do you long to be? That's all very kind of a very feminine way of being with visioning, and that is really, really an important process with visioning. In fact, perhaps one of the most important processes, always being with visioning. But phase two is about using that to intentionally choose. So this is about being really precise and purposeful, really kind of formalizing and choosing your vision and holding space for your vision. And holding space is actually a more masculine way of being. So it's about saying, what do I intentionally long to create? And actually now I'm going to hold space for that. I'm going to create a container to allow the aligned action to flow, to allow myself to take aligned action. And again, it's that kind of the harmony of the feminine working with the masculine in this visioning process. So that's what it feels like to me anyway. So both steps can have resistance. If you've got some wounding around the feminine, then you're likely going to suffer and struggle with the phase one, which is the dreaming. If you've got some wounding around the masculine, you might then have a bit of resistance about intentionally creating a vision. So just notice where you're feeling resistance into the process. And just this noticing, again, illuminating, do I have some wounding around the feminine part of the visioning? Do I have some wounding around the masculine part of the visioning? And again, just illuminating that will free you up to choose into visioning each time it feels difficult. So I just wanted to presence that because it felt quite interesting to me as I noticed when I was kind of planning this episode that actually it's that beautiful divine harmony of the divine feminine and divine masculine. So that was a bit of a side thing. Now, the other important thing, which I've spoken to a little bit, but I wanted to just come back to because it is really critical, is how so many of my clients, and I suspect sometime I would have done this as well, and I suspect I probably still do actually from time to time, is kind of clouding the visioning with the hows. So it's a pattern I really notice in my clients, my one-to-one work with people, is that they often jump to the I want this and then cloud it with the how immediately. So we're like, oh, I really long for this. This is great. They've got in touch with their feminine desires and they really know what they want to create. And then they're like, oh, but I can't because I've got to do this, this and this. And how am I going to do that? I don't know how I'm going to do that. And this really takes away from the vision. And yeah, I suspect I do this myself when I'm not being conscious. In fact, the other day, I'm just thinking of an example now, I was visioning longer term and I was like, oh, I'm feeling a really inconvenient heart's longing to one day go and live in Bali. And that's not a small dream. Let's be honest, I live in the UK. Bali's 18 hours away. And I was like, God, that's really, really inconvenient. Which also, by the way, if it is inconvenient, it's more likely to be a soul nudge. So I was like, great, this is not what I'm wanting. How on earth am I going to do that? So yeah, I suspect I do this. And yeah, I felt into it a little bit more and was like, yes, this is soul aligned and inconvenient. How can I go and live in Bali when I have a home in the UK? I've got a baby, my partner's got a job here, my family are here. We can't even travel at the moment because of COVID restrictions. I've not been vaccinated. So I was like, oh. And then I realised I was clouding the vision with not only the how, but also a mixture of things that I illuminated. So, you know, it wasn't easy, it wasn't realistic, and there was a side of victim thrown in as well, where I couldn't really see my true power and I was in shadow. So when I consciously investigated this vision a little bit deeper, opening my heart to knowing that I didn't know how I was going to create it, but feeling deeper into the longing, it turned out that I actually longed to create some sort of beautiful, witchy, soul-led retreats in Bali and live there for 1 month a year. So this really is quite a fresh vision for me. I've no idea how it's going to get created, but I've honoured it by writing it down into my vision. And I keep a written vision, by the way, and I'd invite you to do the same, to maybe journal of your longings into a vision. And as you're doing that, when you've kind of got a list of all your longings, then I would invite you to write them as if you've already got it, as if you've already completed it. So almost like turn it into an affirmation, but it's a really unique informed affirmation that's very tailored around the stuff that you've liberated, around the stuff that you've illuminated from desire. So for example, it would be a statement like, I do whatever my vision is. So yeah, that was another really powerful way to begin to write that vision down and use it to focus. So a second question in the group was, how can I not be influenced and distracted by things going on in my life? And I'm going to extend this a bit to cover how can I not be influenced by other people in my life, because I know that my clients struggle with this one often as well. So the most important thing here is for your visioning to be clean. And by clean, I mean free from any shadow, any fears, any doubts, any stories that you may have from childhood, any hows, anyone else's opinion. So this first point is, I'm at it again, the first point, we're on about the 100th point by now, but you get the point, is make sure it's your vision. That is the most important thing. Often secret witches will begin to vision for others too. And it's so tempting to try and include your partner, your kids, in terms of like what they want. But this is about what you want. This is about you becoming the leader of your life. And whilst that can take some navigating, some negotiation with aligned action and coming from a place of power, when someone creates their vision for life from love, usually that is so powerful that it can't really be argued with as such. And it's not about kind of winning. It's about then negotiating that so that is going to align for everybody. But you are such a powerful manifester that it will feel right. So it's not about what others think is right for you. This is about your desires, which can feel very bold to tune into at first and can easily get mixed up with what others think you should be doing. But really become aware of how easily these dreams can get caught up in others' ideas and expectations, and consciously choose to tune into yours with an open heart. And from there, you'll powerfully be able to create it and negotiate it, so that it aligns for everybody, so that everybody is fulfilled. Now, the second part to this is, when you have a clean vision, how can you not be influenced? So this is by honing your focus. When you've got access to deeper parts of your heart that let you know the longings, when you can really feel in your body the joy of what you're visioning, and you know that you're being called in that direction, it's so easy to then get distracted as a secret witch. It's likely you'll feel the call of the family, of the mundane work that needs to be done, the housework, or, you know, and it's likely that you'll perhaps even create drama in your life to sabotage your big dreams, or you'll have some unconscious stories holding you back. So it's likely that those might be, and these are based on my own personal experience and those of clients, stories like, I'm not worthy of my desires. And if you do have these, you'll unconsciously create that instead, unless you hone your focus. So for a while, I really kept flitting back and forth on this. My own coach would just reply to every message I sent with, where's your focus? Which, by the way, I now do with my own clients, and I know how annoying that probably is for them. So yeah, it's Really such an important lesson, and it's again a bit deeper into the path actually, when we have managed to at least kind of identify our needs, identify our vision. But the more focused we are, the more magic we can create, and that really is an important lesson. Any nudge that comes along to create something that helps you to focus on your vision is worth following. So this is where, at this point now, you've done the work to illuminate, to liberate. This is where you might now create a vision board, or have create a sacred space that visually represents your vision, or you might journal about your vision daily, or you might meditate on it, or you might engage in a magical visioning process. You might have a ritual, you might speak out your vision daily as if it's happened, which is a powerful practice I undertake myself, and I really do notice the difference if I miss doing this. So this is really up to you to feel into what powerful practice helps you keep focused on your vision. And the reason I am highlighting this is it is no good to have got to this point without doing the work on visioning to firstly open your heart and illuminate the stories holding you back. So this is a later on in the path, this kind of creating practices around visioning, because firstly we need to open our hearts, illuminate the stories holding you back, really look into the childhood beliefs and stories that you had, that you created, about dreaming in order to choose new stories. So without doing that powerful work, without seeing the fear, without welcoming it all, without loving it all, you are just not going to have as much success with creating as you would if you did this work, because it's deep, powerful work, it's transformational. So that's so important, is not just kind of bypassing all of the fear and be like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. It's about seeing it, holding the fear, loving the fear, and still choosing into your vision. And also, we talked a little bit about the masculine. Focusing on the vision is not just about dreaming, but taking aligned action. So I remember my coach likened it to climbing a mountain. You can sit there dreaming about getting to the top of the mountain all you like, but you're not going to get there unless you actually take the aligned action, the steps to walk up to get there. And I know I'm not particularly a massive fan of mountains, but I have climbed a mountain in Bali. So I really get that analogy of like, I had to take aligned action to get to the top there. And that journey really does require an open heart. It requires courage and it requires love. And actually, it reminds me when I was in Bali walking this mountain, I actually got led up by, I think it was like an 8-year-old little boy from Bali, because I was terrified of walking up that mountain. And when I got to the top of the mountain, there was a monkey, and I just thought, I'm really, really hungry. So I got out a banana that the trip organisers had given me, and I was starving. I remember I was starving, and it was for sunrise, and the sun was rising. I got my banana out, and this monkey just came over and stole my banana. I was like, well, that's just that at the time my story was like, well, that's just the story of my life, isn't it? So my focus went right downhill, I can tell you. But it's when a monkey steals your banana, it's still keeping that vision, you've got there, you've seen the sunrise. So and also you want to get back down. So it's taking the aligned actions to really step towards your vision. And it does require courage, it does require love, and you must love yourself through this journey. And that feels like one of the last things to share on, actually, because I know we've gone over actually in this episode, but it feels really useful. So the last thing, if there's one thing, so we've gone straight from all the first things to do into the last thing, just by the way, I noticed the irony of that. So after all of those things, the last thing to talk about, to focus on, that will really help you is noticing whatever your resistance is with visioning with complete love. Now, this is so important to end on, because I couldn't really stress enough the importance of loving ourselves tenderly through this process, and especially at this part of the journey. So as we begin to take those tender first steps, visioning is all about opening. And opening is the literal first step into my Live Your Wild Alchemy path. The first step is called opening for a reason. So we have to grant ourselves permission to open up our hearts. This is really a hard step. So even if that doesn't feel accessible to you right now, love where you're at. It's all welcome. So that stick that you're beating yourself up with is not required. It doesn't mean you can't step into visioning. It just means there's more material for liberation, that this frustration, this shame, this guilt, whatever this feeling is that you're feeling, will illuminate if you bring enough love to it. So visioning is a difficult process when we don't feel worthy of a bigger life, when we don't feel capable of a bigger life, when we aren't used to choosing our own dreams. And it's even more difficult when we don't love ourselves through the difficulty of it. So it does get easier. You will open and soften. It's inevitable if you commit to this kind of way of being. And it's a real practice in tenderness. So if you're completely closed, there's just more to love. It's just an invitation to tend the fear, to begin kind of listening into the body and accessing the fears that are keeping you closed. And again, if you haven't listened to Tending Your Nervous System, the solo episode, I think it was episode 6, that helps you to begin to listen into the body, then that's a good place to start. And as you do this more and more, as you access deeper into the body, you'll be able to access the visioning and the dreaming. And it's okay for you to do it in that order. You've got to love where you are. Where you are is perfect, and you can still choose in to walk in the path of expansion into who you really are. Now, before we go, I have something beautiful. And this, because this is such an important first step on the path of living your wild alchemy and liberating your wild witch, I wanted to birth something that would really support secret witches into this path, that was centered around visioning, centered around that kind of first steps into manifesting, because this really is the real art of manifesting your magic. So you may have already seen, but if you haven't, I released in July, the new moon in July, I released and birthed a very exciting new free offering called Manifesting with the Moon. So this is a gorgeous, gorgeous monthly online open circle space for us to gather. It's completely free. I'm creating basically a safe alchemical altar space for you secret witches, and me as well, to gather together, to begin listening into your heart, tuning into your body, honouring your soul, loving yourself completely, opening into your radiance and reclaiming your power. So I wholeheartedly invite you, if you are feeling the call of visioning, wherever you're at with it, to step into the safety of our intimate group sharing circle, to begin dreaming and visioning your heart's desires into reality and creating a life of magic on your terms. So Manifesting with the Moon is where you can get up close and intimate with me as I share my wild alchemy vision. And I'm going to be holding you as you take your tender first steps into the path of liberating your wild witch and manifesting the magical life that your unique soul longs for. And I created this. I'm so excited for it because if something like this had been about when I was treading this path, I'd have been so delighted. And that is why I've created it, to basically more deeply serve you gorgeous souls into the path of magic and help you really discover your heart's longings and unique gifts. So if that's speaking to you, if that is making your body tingle or whatever, however it's expressing in your unique body, then you can find out more and book your free tickets over at www.nicollebarton.co.uk/moon-circle. So please, if you do want to come, make sure to book your ticket, your free ticket, as spaces are limited to 15 people. The first one filled up really quickly, and yeah, so I don't imagine that the tickets will be around for long, but there are kind of a few months ahead, so do book onto that if you want to join us. And yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it. We've gone over a little bit on this episode, but thank you for listening. I would love to hear from you, so please do reach out if you have any questions or comments. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you and hopefully meeting you live in person at our online circle. See you soon. I loved this topic, which was chosen beautifully by our Facebook group members. I hope you enjoyed listening. Let me know what you thought, and if you want to vote on the next solo topic, join us in the Secret Witch Circle group on Facebook. Here are my key takeaways. Visioning is not what it seems in the world of self-help. It isn't something new to learn how to do. We're already doing it. It's just likely we are focused the wrong way and instead need to do the work to open up our hearts in order to create what we really long for. It's likely visioning doesn't feel easy. Soul-aligned visioning will feel quite scary as you slow down and begin to consciously tune into your heart. But it's something you have to choose into to receive the benefits, and you do have the power to do so, even if it doesn't feel like it, because your power is secret to you too. You can start gently. One of the first steps is consciously giving yourself permission to go into the well of your body and listen to its soft animal. We need to become familiar with our body's signals for desire. To access our desire, we need to feel safe, and to create this safety for ourselves, we must illuminate all the old stories holding us back. Noticing is a powerful practice. The central purpose of visioning is about letting ourselves feel into who we long to become. Ask yourself, who is the woman I long to become? In the absence of how I'll create that. It's almost a beautiful two-step process, the feminine opening and the masculine holding space for and focusing on the vision. During both, there is a lot of love required, and love is the magical key. If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.